Welcome to the webinar channel of the Association of Certified eDiscovery Specialists. My name is Mike Quateraro. I am the president of ACEDS. Today, we are going to be joined, a very special treat today, by our partner, Altumatim, our newest and emerging partner, for a webinar that is entitled Autonomous Review, the revolutionary AI-powered process that is faster and more precise than any other document review approach. We'll get into our presentation in a minute. Obviously, we love questions. We'd like to take your questions. You can submit your questions using the Q&A widget located on your screen. All questions are anonymous. If you would like a copy of today's slide deck, you should be able to download it from the resource widget located on your screen. All right, without further delay, I am pleased and super excited to introduce David Gasky and Vasu Mahavishnu from Altumatim. You can, of course, learn more about Altumatim at altumatim.com. I will hand off to David now for the beginning of the presentation. David, please take it away.
Well, thank you, Mike. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. It's a great pleasure to introduce you to Autonomous Review. And we're really referring to this as a pivotal moment in the story of eDiscovery. I mean, our whole platform is focused on the story. That is the basis and the core principle of the Altumatim platform, is telling the best story and finding the evidence that supports that best story. And we're referring to this as a pivotal moment in the story of eDiscovery because every good story has that pivotal moment where things change. I mean, there's a drastic change, and everything that led up to that seems less important than that which follows. So that's happening today with our release of Autonomous Review. The review process will not be the same after you begin using Autonomous Review. So as you well know, the majority of eDiscovery resources are dedicated to that review process. The amount of data and the types of data just keeps growing. So it's a growing process, and it's a real challenge to manage that aspect of meeting your eDiscovery obligations. Autonomous Review streamlines that review process. It automates things and makes it very, very easy for you to get that done. There's no model building, no predictive coding, no tar or cal for you to be concerned with. Autonomous Review takes care of all of that for you. It's extremely effective. It's more accurate than human-based review. It's efficient. Reviews can now be completed in time spans measured in hours rather than months. So how do we accomplish that? Well, we're using superior technology to deliver better results. Altumatim is always result-oriented. We're not interested in selling you features or technology. We're interested in helping you deliver the best results for your clients. We do that in part by reviewing every single document. Autonomous Review takes a look at every document. Compared to using predictive coding, where many documents are not looked at all, you will have an analyzed report on the review of every document. We're very careful to avoid things like hallucinations or other issues associated with AI making mistakes or going off the rails. So we've engineered an intricate process that involves a minimum of 7 decisions per document. That completely avoids any chance of an LLM hallucination, for example, giving you a wrong answer. It's based on a dynamic prompting that's based on case analysis performed by Altumatim's engine. If you're already using the Altumatim platform for preparing your case, everything the system has learned about your story informs the review process. If you're not doing that, it's as simple as uploading the complaint or a review manual or guide that you might have prepared for human reviewers. Either way, Altumatim learns about the case, and that informs the review process, which again makes it even more accurate. We are LLM agnostic. Now, what do I mean when I say that? We don't depend on any particular model. Some vendors may say they use GPT-4. We don't rely just on that. That gives us flexibility. We can operate in our cloud, in your client's cloud. We have the ability to adapt to your specific needs and accomplish the same results. We provide analysis on a request by request level. We can be that specific. You don't have to produce request by request answers to your opponent, but you have that information at your disposal. For example, some requests are asking for more important information than others. You have the ability, based on the results Autonomous Review provides, to look at those most important documents much quicker and easier than you otherwise would. We provide a reasoned analysis for every decision. If a document is responsive, we explain why. If it's not, we explain why that decision was made. When it comes to challenges, motions to compel, defensibility, this is unmatched. No human reviewers provide you the level of analysis that Autonomous Review provides for every decision it makes. We have the ability to not only make responsiveness calls, but to detect privilege, PII, PHI, confidential information, and even issue specific documents for those issues in your case. So let's go ahead and jump into the platform here and show you just how easy it is to get great results with Autonomous Review. When you come into Autonomous Review, what you're seeing right now is what you would be presented with on your display as a result of completing a production or a review. And we'll jump into that in detail in just a moment. But let me show you how easy it is to get to this point. So in Autonomous Review, you start by simply creating a review. When this form opens up, you just make a few choices and upload a few documents, and the system is ready to go to work for you. So you're selecting a case, and here we're using data from the Mallinckrodt opioid litigation. And you would select that case and then give your review a name so you know which one that you're working with. Now, the basis for the review is the request. It could be a subpoena or whatever document you're working with that tells you what you need to find. So you can upload a set of requests for production, for example. So you would go to an appropriate folder on your system and simply upload that document and load it into Autonomous Review. You can provide additional case information, again, to inform the system so that it makes even better decisions for you during the review process. The background facts could be an uploaded document, such as a review manual or guide that you would provide to a human review team. It could be a summary of the case that you prepare. It could be a short version of the story that trial counsel wants to tell. That's your choice. Whatever you provide, Ultimatum will ingest it, analyze it, and make decisions based on that information. You can also simply upload the complaint if you don't want to prepare any of those documents. Litigation, there's always a complaint, and that gives a great framework for the story that Ultimatum needs to understand. So simply doing those couple of things gets you ready to begin your review. Once that process is completed, the documents are uploaded, and you can see here we have a second review card that is presented, our sample review. Now, the next thing you would want to do is run the case analysis. Now that that information is present, let Ultimatum go to work for you. Make determinations about what matters to your case, what matters to the requests that you're looking at, and get you to the point of finding the documents you need. Once you do that, you have the ability to run the review, but you also have the ability to go in and look at how Ultimatum has set up the review for you by looking at each individual request and making any adjustments that might be necessary. You could actually edit the text of a request if that was appropriate, or add additional facts. Like, for example, here, this case is regarding opioids sold by Mallinckrodt. If you realize, let's say at this point in your workflow, that you forgot to include some of the product names that were opioids, you could add those in the additional facts box here, and that will inform the system to recognize those products as opioids in order to make a call whether a particular document is responsive. Once you are comfortable that everything is ready to go, you simply click Run Review, and the system goes to work for you. If you're dealing with a data set like we have loaded for Mallinckrodt, which is over 1 million documents, the entire review can be done in a day. We have the ability to process hundreds of thousands of documents extremely quickly with accuracy that exceeds human review. So let's assume that we ran the review and we get to the point where we now have our results. So there are different things that you can do with the results right inside of the Autonomous Review platform. If you want to, you can start off by viewing a report. It's an overall summary of the review process. Now here we can see that of the 1,078,000 documents that are part of this data set, a little over 265,000 of them were found to be relevant to the case. That's part of the analysis that Autonomous Review completes, determining which of these documents are even relevant. Because in that million documents, of course, there will be many that are not going to be even relevant to be considered in detail on a request by request basis. So we give you that report. Next, as you see the number of documents of those that are actually responsive to at least one request in the set of requests that's being run for this review. In this instance, we also ran privilege detection. And we can see here that almost 14,000 documents are potentially privileged. Those are quarantined for you and put in a separate place where you can go in and verify, is this in fact privilege? Should it be produced or should we withhold it? Generating a privilege log, of course, is automated to make that convenient for you. The other thing you can do right here inside the platform is you can look at the results on each request. So if we look at the requests, we can see that you get for each request, you have the ability, you see the completed, the status, of course, and you have the ability to view data for each request. So if we were to open up the view data panel, what you see here is a list of each document analyzed in conjunction with this request, whether it was responsive or not. You get that analysis that tells you this is why the system decided what it decided. If it's responsive, the snippet is an excerpt from the document, which is the part that the system detected, making that document responsive. You can export all of this information. Each of these is a deliverable that you can use in whatever platform you are accustomed to doing your redaction and production workflows, for example. So all of this data is available to you outside of the Ultimatum platform, as well as being usable in the platform the way we're showing you today. For each document, you have the ability to go in and see exactly why the system made the decisions it did. And you have the ability in the quality control to agree or disagree. So if a document is found responsive and you disagreed, if you mark it disagree, it gets removed from your production, so it will not be produced. But let's take a look at the type of results that we can provide for you. So here's a typical document. It's an email. And what you see is on the right side, you will see the request, so you know what you're looking for. And then you have whether it's responsive or not. In this instance, Autonomous Review found that this document is responsive. It gives that excerpt under the snippet there that says why it is responsive. Now here the request is dealing with Mallinckrodt targeting high volume prescribers. And you can see here that the text that was found includes Dr. Mashali, being most likely to write most of the two products. He's already written, many in a row, according to the author of this email. So this definitely fits within that high volume aspect of the request. It also can be inferred that this regards targeting such an individual or marketing to such an individual. So the confidence level that this document is responsive to this request in this instance is high. So you'll get an indication of that. Everything under the AI analysis there, again, that's a deliverable. That can be exported. If let's say you're working in Relativity, if that's your favorite platform for running your productions, all of that information will be in fields for you there. So you have all of that to work from while you conduct that part of your production. Let's take a look at another document just to give you a sampling of the types of results that we provide. So again, the same request at issue here. We're talking about high volume prescribers. We're talking about marketing plans, sales calls, things like that is what the system is looking for. Here it found this document to be responsive as well. It refers to two individuals and prescribing things for patients, prescribing the Mallinckrodt opioids, but it does not discuss anything about high volume. So the system has found this to be responsive for you. And in the analysis, it explains why that was. But if you notice, the confidence here is not high, it's medium, because according to the system, the document's content matches the request criteria, but it does not specifically mention high volume. So it appears to be responsive, yes, but the confidence of the system is medium. But of course, you can evaluate that on your own and decide whether you actually produce this or not. We take a look at one more on the responsiveness side. So here we have, again, the same request, and looking at whether this pertains to Mallinckrodt and targeting high volume prescribers. This one seems to be right on point because we're talking about the physician who represents 40 to 50% of this particular representative's business. Sounds like a high prescriber, so the confidence level that this is responsive is listed as high, which makes sense. Let's move along and take a look at the results of privilege detection. As I mentioned earlier, we have the ability to run multiple, what we call secondary tasks. We're just showing you privilege for now, just to give you a sample of, again, the type of results you can expect from autonomous review. So here we have a document that is talking about Medicare and Medicaid services and changes to those. It got flagged as privileged. And we tell you the privilege type that was detected. In this instance, it's in-house counsel. We also detect work product privilege, and we detect attorney-client privilege if it's an outside law firm, for example. The privilege category can be, it depends on what the content is of the document. Here, it could pertain to legal strategy, for example. Maybe somebody's giving advice on the strategy they're going to take with respect to these changes to the Medicare and Medicaid. The summary explains why the system found this to be privileged, and it gives you a confidence level in this case as well. So this really arms you to very effectively and efficiently get through those documents that are potentially privileged and make sure you're preserving your client's privileges and not producing things that you, of course, don't want to do inadvertently. Let's look at another privilege example or two. So in this instance, we have another email, and here it's a communication regarding enterprise level risks. So that sounds like something that is potentially an issue. And the snippet here is that the key risks are most impactful to Mallinckrodt. So looking at that and looking at, like, for example, the title of the author here is in risk management. There's some potentially legal implications here, and the system therefore flagged that as privileged, or at least potentially privileged for you, with a confidence level of medium. If, for example, the author's title was general counsel, that confidence, of course, would boost up closer to high, depending on if the context of the document warranted that confidence level. So you can see there's nuances really to what's being detected. It's not just looking for a header that says attorney-client privilege. It's not just identifying individuals who are attorneys. It's actually understanding things within the context and drawing inferences to say, this is something that you should take a look at. We'll take one more look at a privilege example here. And this one is showing you how we detect whether privilege is broken. In many instances, there's an email chain. Privileged information may be communicated by email, and at some point, somebody gets copied who's outside of the privilege, a third party, for example. So here we have a document that is from Associate General Counsel, talks about being involved in identifying low-risk customers, so the type of thing that a lawyer would be speaking to the client about. And so it would come under the umbrella of privilege. But if you notice within the recipients, there's an email outside of mail and prop. So the system flagged that for us, gave us a confidence level of medium, saying that the email communication basically is privileged, but this privilege could potentially be broken. So the potential of breaking privilege is detected for you and served up to you on a silver platter, making it easier for you to decide whether you could in fact withhold this document from being produced. So that's an example of the type of results you can get with autonomous review. Again, within hours, not months. The specificity and the record that you have increases defensibility along the way. If necessary, you could point out to a judge in response to a motion to compel, these are the exact documents we found responsive to this request that we're being accused of not responding to. You can also provide statistically significant samples of the null set, which includes analysis of why each one of the documents you're providing was not included in your production. So you really have huge advantages compared to what you can get from a standard human review. We have the ability to detect a variety of things, including issue-specific documents. It all depends on how you set up those secondary tasks and exactly how much you want to get out of the autonomous review process. That's all I intended to share with you today. I'm happy to take any questions anybody has. We're very excited about the launch of autonomous review. We are still running our early adopter program. We have a few slots open for that. The advantage to doing that is you get white glove treatment. We'll basically, if you want us to, hold your hand throughout the review process. As you can see, it's quite simple, but we'll guide you in terms of setting up the case information, the background. If you need to adjust anything, as you want to look at the request before you run it, all of that, we provide that. And you have the advantage of being able to customize the way you want the reporting provided for you. So we do have a question about the technology behind the tool. What is the technology? Well, it's multi-layered. We are using our proprietary analysis engine as part of the way of getting to these determinations. We're also using large language models. A lot of the analysis, and it's certainly generating that output, that is accomplished through a large language model. As I mentioned before, we're not tied to any specific model. We're using different models for different purposes along the way. I can't really give you the secrets as to how we're doing that, but it's analogous to think of it this way in terms of controlling those large language models so we avoid things like hallucination. It's analogous to having a team of reviewers collaborating together in a room with a case expert supervising what they're doing. That's effectively what we're accomplishing through technology and delivering the kind of results that we showed you today. So there are a number of questions coming in here. Let me pull up a couple of them here. Okay, so this one says, how did we arrive at 7 questions in terms of that minimum that we got? That's just part of the intricate process that we design. I can't explain to you that without giving away the secret sauce. But that minimum of 7 really gets you extreme accuracy and avoids, like for example, if you gave one prompt to ChatGPT and asked it if it was responsive, you might get an accurate result. And then the next time you do it, you might not. We're not taking those chances. We've designed guardrails around that entire process. And again, made it effectively collaborative so that there's multiple layers of decision-making throughout the process. And somebody else asked to expand on that minimum of 7. I think that's about as much as they can do publicly today. I'd be happy to talk to anybody maybe in more detail under an NDA if you wanted more detail on exactly what we're doing with all of those decisions that we're making along the way. The question here is regarding can we explain the process to utilize with relativity data? Yes, what you can do is basically swap load files in and out between Relativity and Ultimatum. We are currently finalizing the API that we will have so that that is a seamless process. The document information, the load file can go from Relativity, if that's where you're hosting, into autonomous review. The process can happen. You can do the type of review that I was doing, in terms of looking at the individual documents and looking at the analysis, certainly in autonomous review. But again, that data will be available to you in Relativity, so you'll be able to incorporate that into your workflow there, if that's what you prefer. So it really should be a seamless, easy process to swap in and out between the two platforms. See what other questions we have here. One question is whether there are validation routines apart from the sampling. There is validation built in within that multiple decision process. We do have ways of detecting when there's conflicts among the decisions, and that is a way of validating. We have ways of dealing with that when that occurs, because that's a flag. If there's different decisions being made along the way, we want to make sure that the right decision is the one that comes out in the end. So we have that validation in the sense of being able to detect that. Somebody's asking about what kind of stats are there in the areas of recall and precision. Now, those terms are of course, associated with the predictive coding way of doing things. It really doesn't apply here in the sense that we're looking at every single document and making a decision whether it should be produced or not. The reason why recall and precision become an issue in the predictive coding context is because you're not actually looking at everything. And so those give you measures of how good was your cutoff. If your recall and precision, and they're also used for determining whether your model is acceptable, of course, whether you want to continue refining your model and run it. But because you don't do the model building here, and you don't make the decision of where is the cutoff, you really don't have to deal with those numbers specifically. But we can explain in more detail on a one-on-one basis as to why the accuracy is as high as it is. And then a good question here, how do you defend the technology before a judge without explaining what technology is running behind the curtain? I would do that a couple of ways. One, I would be able to explain that, Your Honor, we, through our system, looked at every single document and made a decision. whether it should be produced or not. We went into the data on a request by request level. So we were extremely specific in terms of what we found to be responsive and what we did not. And we can provide as much sampling as the court or the opposition needs to see, for example, here's the null set, and here's the analysis, why these documents were not included. I would think after a few, I don't know, it would be a few documents or a few pages worth of those, that it should become clear that, yeah, these things are on, and it should be defensible that way. Again, having that analysis, that detailed, reasoned analysis as to why we made this decision, to me, is far more, as an attorney, is far more defensible than, well, some reviewer, I don't know who it was, they clicked yes, and maybe they should have clicked no. We're giving you a lot of specific information that I think really arms you to give that defense. And then a question here about how long would it take for the system to ingest multiple terabytes of data? Assuming that you're transferring them over from, let's say, Relativity or another platform in load file format, that's a very, very quick process. Again, we could get from that, the beginning of the transfer to the point of having your review done in a matter of days. If they were natives, we do have our own custom pipeline that does ingest documents. Of course, that takes a little bit more time with natives because data is inherently messy. It would depend on things like how much has to be OCR'd, how many file types are there, what's the average size of a PDF, as we all probably have seen PDFs that are more than one file all crammed into, or excuse me, more than one document all crammed into one file. So it's just going to depend on how messy the data is, but we certainly have the capability of ingesting natives, even at a multi-terabyte level, if that's what you're facing. And then do we have any other questions here? Let's see. How do you control for human deference to the technology suggestion? So let's say we're using it to tee up a set of documents for human reviewers to go through that verification process, if you will, and decide, am I going to agree or disagree? I think that would be a matter of training. It would be a matter of teaching the individuals who are involved in that process just what's involved here, and informing them that they have the ability to make their own decision. Certainly getting that reasoned analysis is going to help them understand why there was a yes or a no. So I really just think that's just a matter of training. It's just a matter of having informed reviewers who would be working on that part of the process. If it's something where you run autonomous review as your review, there's really no human review involved, and that verification point, is there going to be deference or not, that would probably, in my assumption, involve an attorney who has a sense of what's important to this case, what's responsive or not. And so, there'd be a little bit of a different interaction level, I suppose, between the technology and the person at that level. So it just depends on who's doing it. But I think appropriate training or instruction would take care of, avoiding them just always deferring to the system. Although I believe autonomous review would always be right. Of course, I'm a little bit biased in that regard. So there's a question here about, do we handle files that are non-text? It depends on what's in that file. If it's a video file, for example, that is going to be flagged as an unprocessed file. It won't be included in the review because it's not capable of watching the video, for example. So any documents that cannot be read by the system will be segregated. You will be notified these were not included, and so they're going to require some other type of processing in order for you to confirm whether that's something that's responsive or not. Okay, anybody else have any questions? It doesn't look like it. So we really appreciate your attention today. It's been a pleasure introducing you to Autonomous Review. We look forward to speaking to you. We are co-sponsoring the ACEDS scrimmage event at ILTA next week. So if you will be there, please stop by. We'd love to meet with you and chat about autonomous review and other things. I mean, there's more to life than autonomous review. Just would really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and talk to you. And there is, somebody snuck in a question here just before I was saying goodbye. So does the tool process files? Yes, we have a pipeline that ingests load files and natives, depending on what you have. So we can take raw data, from your client, and we can process that and run a review on that. We don't rely on a load file transfer. Of course, if the load file is pre-processed, that makes the process on our end quicker, a little simpler, but it's really not a problem. We can handle natives just as well as load file transfers. So as I mentioned, we'll be at ILTA. Look forward to meeting you there while we're co-sponsoring with ACEDS. And other than that, we look forward to hearing from you. Any follow-up questions, any other interests you have. We'd love to speak to you more about Ultimatum, about autonomous review. Really appreciate you attending the webinar today.